This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
All right, we're going to start. Welcome to our Legislative Candidates Forum. We appreciate your attendance tonight to learn more about these candidates, their positions on issues that affect our local community. My name's Scott Biederman. I'm a co-founder of a local small business, Muskie Tank, and I'm the volunteer chair of the Eau Claire Chamber's Governmental Affairs Committee. The moderator role rotates between the sponsors, and this year the Eau Claire Chamber's turn, so you've got me. The event sponsored by the Eau Claire Leader Telegram, WQOW TV 18 News, Valley Media Works, the Chippewa Valley's public access station, Eau Claire Area Chamber of Commerce. We also appreciate Chippewa Valley Technical College for providing the venue, and great venue out here this year. So thank you for that. Our format tonight is to begin with question and answer session with the candidates, and then a little bit of a change, I think, from the norm. After a short break, probably around 8 o'clock, the candidates will move to the tables around the room, and you'll see them kind of out along the outskirts there. You could take advantage of a more informal opportunity to meet them and ask your own questions. So please take advantage of that. Now to begin the Legislative Candidate Forum. This year there are 5 candidates running for 2 local Senate seats and 8 candidates running for 4 area State Assembly district seats. And we've seated the candidates by district and alphabetically. So tonight we welcome from the 23rd Senate District, Kathy Bernier, Republican, and Chris Kapsner, Democrat. From the 31st Senate District, Aaron Camacho, the Green Party, Mel Pittman, Republican, Jeff Smith, Democrat. From the 67th Assembly District, Ren Katuri, Democrat, Rob Summerfield, Republican. From the 68th Assembly District, Republican Jesse James and Democrat Wendy Sue Johnson. From the 91st Assembly District, Democrat Jody Emerson and Republican Echo Reardon. And from the 93rd Assembly District, Republican Warren Petrick and Democrat Charlie Warner. So welcome. The questions that we will be asked were available to the candidates 1 hour prior to the start of this forum. Candidates are seated by district. Questions will be rotated in a manner that allows candidates in each district to alternate who answers first. Each candidate will be given 90 seconds to answer each question, unless otherwise indicated. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to provide a closing statements. The timekeeper will give a 1 minute, a 30-second, and a stop signal to the candidates. So if you're keeping going, I'm going to cut you off at the sentence. So no run-ons. Because of time limitations, there won't be an opportunity for questions from the audience, but again, we are having a meet and greet after. Please come and ask them questions. I'm sure that everybody up here would love that. So here we go, on to our questions. And we're going to start with the 68th, not with the 68th, with the Senate District down on the end, 23rd. Sorry about that. Kathy Bernier, and then Chris Kapsner. With a strong economy and low unemployment, many local companies are affected by a shortage of available talent to fill open positions. At the same time, there are still some people who struggle to make ends meet. What is the role of state government in working with our region to solve our workforce challenges?
Well, clearly, the most important aspect of employment starts in the education level. We have been working for some time. Since 2013, I authored Wisconsin Fast Forward, which is a worker training program that we partner with the technical colleges, the high schools, and the employers to provide worker training. And I would like to say that that was very foresighted. That occurred in 2013. Wisconsin Fast Forward has done a lot It has also created fabrication labs we're second to only, have MIT fabrication labs in the state of Wisconsin. We're second to only Massachusetts. So we have been working on worker training, and most of those worker training opportunities involve good paying jobs, allowing our kids to grow up with the STEM technology that they need that will make them competitive in our employment areas within the state of Wisconsin. So I think that we have been working that way with our also providing training and educational opportunities for individuals who are on our government assisted programs, that any able-bodied individual who would like to have a working opportunity, an opportunity to work and have that dignity of holding a good paying job, we've also provided that as well.
Thank you. Chris Kapsner?
Good evening, and this is a very important question. And despite the fact that unemployment is at an all-time low and the stock market is doing relatively well, it, however, does not reflect the ongoing struggles of workers in our communities. Wages have remained flat. Since 2010, there's been no increase in wages. So now people have to have 2 jobs to keep their head above water. Not only that, you add to the stress of high cost of health care and student debt loan. All those things are stressing our communities. So we need to get back to basics that have been neglected for the last 8 years. Investing in each other, investing in education. Education is going to be the jet fuel for our economy. We need highly motivated, highly educated, well-trained workers that are going to be prepared for the 21st century. That is what our success is going to be based on.
Okay, thank you. If anybody needs me to repeat the question, just let me know, not a problem. But I think you've all got them. So on to the 31st Senate District. Erin Camacho.
Well, I agree this is an important question, and first and foremost, thank you for all of you for being here to hear us answer these important issues or questions to these issues. And like we've heard before, education is important, right? Education is important, but access to education in Wisconsin is difficult. We're struggling to make ends meet. So when that happens, how do we get to the higher ed? How do we get to the trade school to ensure that we can reach the jobs that are being advocated for in the legislature? We need to be holistic in our approach. And what I mean by that is echoing again, a livable wage. In Wisconsin, we do not have that. According to recent studies, and these are national studies, studies that have been reported on in national news, the livable wage in Wisconsin for a family of 4 is $16.10. And we all know that most times if you have children in the home, it's more advantageous to have one parent home rather than pay for child care while both parents work. It hasn't always been like that, but that's the way that it is today. So a livable wage. Number 2, I think is necessary, is closing the wage gap. If we aren't making ends meet, what good are more jobs that are just going to perpetuate the wage gap that our minority communities and community of women are facing? At best, we're making 30 cents less than our male counterparts. We need to do something about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mel Pittman?
Good evening. Thank you for being here. I appreciate the opportunity to address this crowd. There's been some comments made already about living wage and not making enough money, poor wages. There's a lot of job opportunities out there. Yesterday I was at a meeting with my dairy cooperative, and we had to raise the wages for some of our route truck drivers that deliver retail product to schools and businesses. They were getting $24.95 an hour. We had to give them a $2 an hour raise to keep them on the job and to keep them going. That's not to say that there's other jobs that are paying less. But if people are willing to move up, get additional training, apprenticeships. I think there's a lot of opportunities out there for people to better themselves and to get a better wage and support themselves. Training and education are definitely important. We need to do as much as we can to help those folks do that. But with unemployment at an all-time low, this shortage of workers isn't going to go away. There are opportunities out there for many of us that are out there in the field. We just got to pull ourselves up a little bit and learn to help ourselves also. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jeff Smith?
Thank you. A lot of good ideas you're going to hear tonight, and so we'll try not to repeat too many of them. But we do have a problem with low wages, not just in the state, throughout this country, and the unwillingness to raise wages. I think that's a serious problem. Why would someone come to a state, particularly Wisconsin, that has really been holding back on raising wages? But we also have done a great deal of damage to our unions in this state. And unions are who really have always done the incredible work and job of running apprentice programs. That's where our skilled labor really comes from, and that's where our skilled labor really gets trained. And what you can really rely on is union-made goods. I remember those labels on all sorts of manufactured goods. The other thing I'd like to touch on, though, is something that I haven't heard yet, and that is rural broadband. If you really want your children and grandchildren and next generations to come back to western Wisconsin, and my district is quite rural, they have to have access to high-speed broadband. And who wouldn't want to live in the 31st Senate District? It is the most beautiful area in the world. We need to provide that. We need to find every way possible to get that investment into rural broadband, whether it comes through our co-ops or through the government subsidies or whatever it happens, whatever way it happens, it's got to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. On to the 67th Assembly. Ren Katuri.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this question. And as I was reflecting on the workforce challenges, I was thinking about an opportunity I recently had to go to a food pantry in my district. I was invited by the folks who run the pantry, and what they told me was, we have seen explosive need in our pantries. And the need is not just for food, but it's for housing, it's for paying for healthcare bills. And those folks, they're all working full-time, multiple jobs often. And what we've seen actually in my district is the increase in what's called our ALICE score, which are the people who are working full-time and yet still cannot meet their basic needs. So I think at a state level, we need to address some of those basic needs that we're failing to provide affordable opportunities such as healthcare and housing. And then on the employment factor, yes, we need to be reinvesting in our technical colleges, career training, but also, you know, many folks in my district struggle with addiction. And in order to get folks back on their feet, make sure they're on a path to sobriety and back to full employment, we need to be addressing our addiction crisis in our district. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Rob Summerfield.
All right. Okay, we're on. All right, little technical difficulties. Once again, thank you guys, everybody in this room, for showing for this important event. Quickly, with the workforce development, what I envision in the future, which we made some good steps this last session, is really working with the schools, the companies, the technical colleges, and the universities to figure out what is the correct career path for each student. You know, there's some students that are 15, 16 years old, we can say, hey, you know, they're probably not into English literature. You know, they're not into calculus. There are various things that, you know, they can say, hey, well, maybe they're really excellent on machines, really excellent with computers. We have to do a better job in trying to identify where the student will excel at. And we know one size doesn't fit all. So I think in the next coming budgets that we need to make more of an issue in addressing these issues to make sure that we have a good pipeline for all the available jobs that are in this area and keep on growing our trained workforce. And finally, just one little thing about the housing. I was proud this last session to pass a bill to create more low-income housing in rural areas. So myself and many of my other Republican colleagues in the Capitol have seen that this is an issue that we need to address. And it's just not throwing away money at this situation. It is making sure that we work with the private developers, the homeless groups, the other groups that are looking for housing to make sure that we have affordable housing in the district.
Okay, thank you. On to the 68th Assembly. Jesse James.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you all for being here tonight. I believe this all starts with education. It starts with building the proper education and building the future for the kids so that they have the needed education to get into the areas that they want to pursue later in life and get into the workforce a lot quicker. I believe in workforce development. We need to continue training our workers and employees to get to their next promotional level. There's trainings that we go to in every occupation, and if you want to get promoted, you pursue the necessary advancement levels to get to that next level and the trainings, and it's something that you have to take on. Part of the responsibility is yourself. And then also just making Wisconsin even more of an attractive environment for the potential employees to come to Wisconsin, live here, work here, and then retire here.
Okay, thank you. Wendy Sue Johnson.
Yeah, thank you for including both the workforce needs and the importance of people struggling to make ends meet. And just to continue on what some of my colleagues had mentioned, it's not just since the recession, but really in our lifetimes. In the past 40 years, we were sold, this story that trickle-down economics would work, and it clearly has not. Real wages have stayed flat. Our buying power has stayed flat, and we've chosen to create a system that rewards those at the top end. And so while CEO salaries might be 300 times their average worker now, there is no cap, yet we aren't bringing the people up from the bottom. And so we really need to look at creating livable wages, but also opportunities for people. As a member of the school board, I don't think it was our responsibility to target kids for a particular track. That's what they did back when, you could be on the track to work at Uniroyal. Well, those days are over. We cannot envision the types of jobs that will exist 4 years from now when our kids graduate, let alone when they're our age. And so we need to not limit them. We need to give them all of the opportunities to be critical thinkers and problem solvers and have intellectual curiosity. And if that means digging into English literature, they're going to be better thinkers for it. And then they will have their options open. I have an 18-year-old who's in his first year in college. He doesn't know what he wants to be in 4 years. He certainly didn't know what he wanted to be 4 years ago. So we need to keep those options open for kids.
All right, thank you. 91st Assembly. Jody Emerson.
Thank you very much for having me here tonight. I think there's a few different things that we need to look at. We need to look at, as many people have mentioned, our education system. We need to build our education system and make sure it's the strongest system that we have. Funding education on the public level and not siphoning off dollars for the private voucher system is really important. Because we need to teach critical thinking skills. As Wendy was talking about, kids don't know what they want to be in a few years. And we are also in a day and age where our careers are changing. You are not in a job for 40 years and retire. People have several jobs and careers along the way, and things that are out here now are not going to be what the jobs are 20 years from now. And so we need to teach people how to think, how to learn, so that they can change as the job market is changing. Another thing I think that we need to invest in is our startups. Our startups are our small businesses, and our small businesses are the backbone of our middle class. We are seeing a shrinking middle class every single year, and we're not putting money into our startups in Wisconsin. We are sinking billions of dollars into foreign corporations, not sinking it into the middle class. And if we were to invest in startup funds, we would have been able to blanket our state with jobs instead of sticking jobs in one corner of the state, as we have with the Foxconn deal. So I think that's one thing we need to do is we need to invest in our startups, and we need to make sure our education systems are strong.
All right, thank you. Echo Reardon.
Hi, thank you for this question, and thank you for having me here. First of all, what we need to do is to build a strong workforce with more investments in technical schools and apprenticeship programs. We need to partner with the private sector and identify students that have an interest in a particular area of study. Yes, we need to have critical thinkers, but we also need to have a direction and goals. And with direction and goals, you can have purpose. And when students have purpose, they feel good, they feel empowered. And granted, as they take their walk through life, they may have a different direction than when they first start, as we all kind of have. But at the same time, if you have a private sector partnering with the educational system, you can identify students who have a particular interest, guide them, offer them tuition assistance, and place them in a career path. As that student then grows in that career and other doors open, they can expand into that area. But agreed, startup companies, I come from a small business background, so I love small businesses. And startup companies are what needs to be funded with grants. Say, if you have a startup company in the trades, I'd like to see a grant program in place for that to promote innovation and inventors and entrepreneurs, promote the STEM courses. Thank you.
Thank you. 93rd Assembly District, Warren Petrick.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and talk about the great things that are happening in this state. It's quite remarkable. I have the greatest job in the legislature. I get to deal with a great Assembly Workforce Development Committee consisting of Democrats and Republicans. We work very hard on workforce issues throughout the year. I also sit on the Governor's Task Force on Workforce Investment, and it's very apparent in listening to the conversations that happen in the private sector and in the public sector that family-sustaining careers are the key. And it's the fundamental key component to personal economic success. I heard someone say the other day, successful, vibrant businesses are what attract skilled workers. It's so simple. But we have a great Chippewa Valley right now. We have great things are happening, wonderful companies that are investing in our state. I believe state government's role, to answer the question, is in economic development is help create the best environment possible so that these private sector jobs come here. That means reducing overbearing government regulation, keeping the tax burden low as possible, and providing job training and opportunities that will help skilled employees for businesses that are competing in a brand new global economy. I voted to increase funding for Wisconsin Fast Forward. I advocate strongly for early education, for skilled trades, more apprenticeships, employing veterans and people with disabilities, and thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Charlie. Warner.
Thank you. Good evening. There's something that we haven't talked about, and I'd like to bring it up because there are a lot of our families who are struggling. There are many couples where they work 3-4 jobs between them. They have no time. They have no energy. They're getting minimum wage or slightly above and hoping they get some overtime to get a little boost. I think we need to raise our minimum wage. I don't think we're justifying or helping anyone. If you look at the median income in 1979, it was $47,000 a year in 1979. There are a few people here that remember that like I do. Today, our median income through the 93rd District is $53,000. Now that's a whopping, disgusting figure. I can't handle it. We need to do that. If you make $35,000 a year, which a lot of our people do, their rent that they could afford ideally would be $875. So that won't even include all the heat and electricity. So we need to work on our housing, we need to work on our minimum wage, and we need to boost our education. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So on to our second question, and we're going to start with the 93rd, okay? And Charlie, this will be your first question. Foxconn's plans for Wisconsin represents one of the biggest economic development projects ever undertaken. Moving forward, What is the legislature's role in assuring that the promised terms of the deal are fulfilled? And Charlie Werner, we'll start with you.
Well, I was delighted to see this question, I think. I've never been in the Assembly, and I really didn't know that there was a role for them that would be to check on what's happened once the laws are made. I would hope somewhere out there there's going to be accountability to ascertain that we have actually provided this. I know Foxconn has had a dismal record in the past for everything from how they treat their employees to the idea that in, I believe, Indiana, they built something similar, not as big, and they still don't have 1,000 employees. So I don't have high hopes for Foxconn, but I certainly hope that we make them be accountable because we're giving them our water, our resources, and an awful lot of our money. I don't like it.
Thank you. Warren Petrick.
The greatest economic development project in the hemisphere. Try to get your head around that for a moment. I had a hard time when this was brought up to the legislature of even imagining what this company will do for this state and already is. I'd like to start with a quote from a friend of mine, Mark Tyler, who serves as the chair of the Governor's Council on Workforce Investment. He said, "I was delighted to attend the announcement yesterday of Foxconn coming to Wisconsin. It's difficult to get one's head around the magnitude. With the job echo ripple effect, tens of thousands of jobs, millions of square feet of construction, I'm proud of the collaborative partners in education, in economic development, in government, and industry that have led to this major step in reforming Wisconsin for the better. Congratulations to everyone." This is transformational, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm glad that I lived long enough to see something like this happen in our fair state. Get very clear, it is a pay-as-you-grow contract. The legislature oversees, but that is it. We know that as the jobs are created, the incentives will come. The more people hired, the more they will capital invest. We will closely watch its progress. We're already seeing the results here in Eau Claire, 150 jobs coming here very, very soon. Beautiful partnerships with the university, research facilities, medical facilities. This is transformational and very, very excited about our future.
Thank you. 91st Assembly, Echo Reardon.
Hi, thank you. Okay, true, it is a pay-as-you-go. Right now, Foxconn is slated to bring 150 to 200 high, new, good-paying jobs to our area. And the thing is they get no tax incentive until a shovel is dug in the ground or a job is created. So it is a pay-as-you-go. Also, any good contract has a clawback clause. So in this case, the state would claw back its investment if Foxconn does not hold up to its end of the bargain and bring jobs to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Jody Emerson.
I think we need to take a minute and call this plan what it is. It's not a workforce development project, it's corporate welfare. It is paying $200,000 per every job that is created. If we invested even a portion of that in startups, in small business, in our education system, not only would it be diverse across our state, it would be not likely to, get overrun when one business goes out. Those of you who've lived in Eau Claire for a while will remember what it was like when Uniroyal closed, how our town felt like it bottomed out because we lost the largest employer. What's gonna happen when Foxconn goes out from Racine area? It's gonna bottom out that town once again, and they've already been through it with the automotive industry. So I think we need to call it what it is. It's corporate welfare. And we also need to look at what is happening around our state because of this project. Walker has diverted $90 million from statewide road projects to build them down in the southeastern part of the state. Bridges are literally falling down in Chippewa County, in Buffalo County, and we don't have the money to build them because the money is going to build extra roads for Foxconn to bring workers from Illinois up to Wisconsin. This is a travesty, and we need to make sure we are watching it closely and doing everything we can to make sure that this program stops.
Thank you. 68th Assembly, Wendy Sue Johnson.
Well, I agree with Charlie that it's not a legislator's role to provide oversight. That's for administrative agencies. So this question is a bit limited. And of course, we're taking liberty in talking about the Foxconn deal in general. And as I previously mentioned, trickle-down economics that was promised to us in the 1980s has proven not to work. It doesn't work. Talk to your economists. It's a con job to pretend that it does. $4.5 billion is a hard number to get get your head around. And so whether it's $200,000+ per job, or per person, per citizen in Wisconsin, it's just under $7,900. And so think of if we gave almost $8,000 to every citizen in Wisconsin to start up a new business, or to pay down their student loan debt, or to put a deposit on a house, the kind of economic development that would rise up. And so it's just, it's just the poster child for priorities that are messed up. We need to invest in people throughout the state, roads throughout the state. And I'd just like to point out how disconnected questions 1 and 2 are. We talked about a workforce shortage, and then we're going to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring jobs into a corner of the state. That's not the solutions we need. We need to re-examine our priorities and create a state that works for all of us, because we deserve better.
Thank you. Jesse James.
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. We have to give things a chance, and with Foxconn coming to Wisconsin, if not Wisconsin, where? It's simple as that. The question here is, what is the legislature's role in assuring that the promised term of the deal are fulfilled? And obviously I wasn't part of the Foxconn deal, but hopefully I will be moving forward. I'm trusting that the proper accountability measures were put in place with this deal, and I look forward to reviewing them. I have not looked at the accountability measures that are in place, but I know that it's been discussed, and I'm gonna probably assume that the people will have to meet what the requirements are. It's really that simple, and as Foxconn builds and grows each year, my goal will be to ensure that they're meeting the established requirements for them coming to Wisconsin.
Okay, 67th Assembly, Rob Summerfield.
Yes, going back about a year and 2 months ago when this first proposal came out, it was very groundbreaking, record-shattering. Foxconn was coming to the state of Wisconsin. Michigan offered a better incentive package, but yet they still chose the state of Wisconsin. So as the bill came out, the process came out, the administration put tons of safeguards in this to make sure that it's pay as they grow. They do not get any money until they actually have the jobs. So this is the way, with the legislature, as we mentioned, it is not so much out of our hands, but we can have committees look at it to make sure that they're spending their money correctly with the Foxconn investment. Metropolitan Milwaukee Association came out with a study that said every dollar the state invested in Foxconn, $18 they're going to get in return. And that's not even counting with them buying the corporate office in Milwaukee, the Green Bay, Eau Claire Innovation Centers, and not even to mention the excitement, the potential that's going to hopefully be in the state of Wisconsin is make sure or transform our economy into this technology. I've got 3 daughters. I'm excited that they're going to be able to stay in the state of Wisconsin and work instead of going out to Silicon Valley, down to Arizona, out to North Carolina in the next 10, 15 years. So this has been an opportunity for the state of Wisconsin to make an investment and continue to grow our great state.
Okay, thank you. Ren Katuri.
Great, thank you. Does anybody remember VCRs? Yeah? I can remember VCRs. I remember watching them at my grandma's house. I'm gonna be 30 about 10 days before Election Day, and I can tell you, if 30 years ago somebody had invested $4.5 billion in a VCR manufacturing plant, do you ever think we'd see that money back? Do you think we'd see that investment pay off? I'm gonna really question this because our technological advances, they change every minute, and we are investing $4.5 billion in a flat screen manufacturing plant in a tiny corner of our state. I would like to see a more holistic approach that studies our industries. We are on a slippery slope where every business owner in this room, every business owner across the state now can come to our state house and say, where's my money, right? So what are we gonna do to holistically look at our paper industry, our dairy industry, our cranberry industry, and our tech industry? And instead of picking winners and losers in our economy, why don't we instead say, what's gonna work best for this industry? What's gonna build this industry? And how are we gonna grow it in all 72 counties instead of just in the southeast corner of our state? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. 31st Senate District, Jeff Smith.
Wait, Ren, you're telling me I can't replace my VCR play? I better keep that one going. I am, you know, I've always been really frustrated and disgusted with the way too often entities pit state against state, community against community. We're always fighting this battle and this divisive, we're going to give you more. No, we're going to give you more. No, we've got more tax dollars over here to give you. No, we've got a lot more tax dollars over here to give you, when in fact, all we do is take away from what's really important to us, our real priorities, which should be our communities, which should be our public schools, which should be even our roads. But we have this constant, we're going to win this battle, and so here we are, Wisconsin. We just took $4.5 billion promise into one foreign company that I really don't trust. I don't trust that company. I don't trust the people who wrote this agreement. And guess what? Kimberly-Clark is already at the door asking for theirs. Where's theirs? And if you look at Kimberly-Clark's history, they haven't even been paying income tax into Wisconsin, but they want more from us. So we got a serious problem with it. I don't call it the biggest economic development project. I call it the biggest economic giveaway project in Wisconsin history. And I got one solution if you want a couple solutions. We need a strong treasurer, and we're going to elect one this fall that's a watchdog, and then we need to do away with WEDC, which has already been giving away with no accountability, and we can't let that happen anymore.
Thank you. Mel Pittman.
Well, you're certainly getting a variety of answers on the Foxconn issue, aren't you? From my standpoint, yes, I was not down in the legislature, so I had no say-so on what happened down there. But as a business person, we have to look at what draws businesses to our state, the type of business climate we have. We also have to look at what are the job opportunities going to be 5, 10, 20 years down the road. There's going to be a lot of automation happening in our industry. And even in our so-called minimum wage, fast food restaurant services, you know, a lot of those positions are being changed out for kiosks, things like that, because those businesses can't afford to pay much more than they currently are, which is all the more reason why we need to look at newer and other job opportunities for our citizens. Is the money well spent? I can't tell you that today, but something that we'll know down the road. But I will tell you that we have to continue to look at opportunities that will keep our citizens in our state of Wisconsin and give them good job-paying opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron Camacho.
So this is a hot topic in Wisconsin. People are watching us in other states to see what's going to happen. We keep hearing Wisconsin is open for business, but at what cost? We're open for business, but we hinder local economy growth, right? We hinder local business owners. Imagine, like we heard a previous speaker said, if we had invested $4 billion in small businesses. Wisconsin owns small businesses. Imagine the difference that would make. It would be huge. Imagine if we spent just a quarter of that on education, a quarter of that on healthcare, which includes IHS, which includes veteran healthcare, which includes healthcare for our elderly population, which is only increasing. The difference in our communities would be enormous, and for the benefit of ourselves and our future generations, right? We need to be thinking about greater impacts than just the economy. What about the water? What about our Great Lakes Compact? What about the diversion of water? That is a commons resource. And here in the upper Midwest, we are incredibly blessed with fresh water, and we sure do take it for advantage, as we've seen with legislator and their decisions last year. We can't afford this. We can't afford to continue to be Foxconn. We need to ensure those clawback clauses are followed up, and we need to make sure that we ensure that our First Amendment right is secured so we can come to the people's house when it's needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Senate District 23, Chris Kapsner.
Well, the first question, we all support education and job growth. I guess there's hope because we all sound like Democrats. However, with Foxconn, there can be a more harsh juxtaposition. This is exactly what government shouldn't be doing. It shouldn't be picking winners or losers. This is anti-capitalistic, it's anti-free market, and it's a boondoggle of spectacular proportions. Our money is going to a foreign corporation, $3 to $4.5 billion. I don't care what number you choose. It's roughly $40 to $70 million per county that we could have invested in our communities. We could have invested in education and healthcare and roads and broadband and all the things we should have been doing for the last 8 years. And instead of getting on bended knee begging a foreign corporation to come to Wisconsin, we should have said, hey, Wisconsin rocks. We have great schools, world-class healthcare, great roads, a highly educated, highly motivated workforce. Come to Wisconsin. And instead, we did the exact opposite. And this is going to be a yoke around our necks, around our children's necks. And it's going to negatively impact all aspects of our future. I think you understand that I don't like this. And so if I'm elected, I will do my very best to hold Foxconn accountable for what they promised.
Thank you, Kathy Bernier.
Well, I am not a big fan of incentivizing sports teams or companies. But in the United States of America, it seems to be the name of the game in order to work on your economic development and your business interests for your state citizens. So that is what we did. But we're not going to just give them money. They have to create the money. We don't have the money in the bank now, so we can't give it to somebody else because it's not there. As far as the southeastern part of the state, you know, last session, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle just raved about how wonderful Minnesota is and the Twin Cities and how our people are moving there and how we need to have similar type economic vibrance in the state of Wisconsin to retain and keep people here. In-migration is what we're working on, and whether it's in the southern part of the state or the western part of the state, it's good for the state of Wisconsin. It's good to keep students who come to be educated here in our UW system, to keep them here, to have them work here, live here, and raise a family here. And we have that opportunity now, and I think it's a great decision that we made in doing that. And the clawback provisions are there, the Department of Administration, the Department of Revenue, and we will all keep a close eye on how they're progressing. But they have one wonderful system. They are investing in all different areas of the state of Wisconsin that was never even a part of the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On to the next question. We'll be starting with Senate District 31 for this one. The Board of Regents recently endorsed a UW Eau Claire proposal for a $250 million science building, which must be approved by the legislature in the next budget. What is your view on this proposed investment and your ideas for funding higher education into the future? And Mel Pittman, we'll start with you.
I had the opportunity to meet with some of the officials from UW Eau Claire in regards to the science building that they're proposing to build. I'm a UW River Falls graduate back a few years ago, maybe about 40-some to be exact. But I always believe that science is probably our best ally when it comes to education and what that can do for any one of us as we move into a career. So the science building for Eau Claire, I think, is a positive step. They talked about how the building is about 60 years old. Equipment's outdated, it's inefficient. And with science, we know that changes rapidly. And so in order to train our students so that they have the ability to get into the workforce and be good employees, competent people, I believe this is a step in the right direction to look at the new building. The question that I have is, I know that UW River Falls is also looking at a massive amount of money to build a new building over there. Madison is continuing to build down there at their campus. So I think one of the things that we have to do, what the legislature will have to do, we'll have to do a serious evaluation. What projects are more important, priority list them, and then what ones can we afford to fund immediately and what ones will we have to wait and do a little bit later. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Camacho.
So investing in our education is only an investment in our future. The sciences are proving to us that sustainability matters. They keep coming out with multiple studies guiding us in a more healthy direction. Of course, it's up to our communities whether we're going to listen and take heed. But the more we support that level of education, that discipline, the better off our communities are going to be. And as we've heard in previous comments, at times the western side of Wisconsin is not necessarily prioritized as much as the metro or larger metro areas in our state. $1.7 billion is the cost of this renovation compared to the numbers we heard earlier. But this is an investment in our future. There are concerns about the level of priorities and how we should decide which buildings, which renovations we do first. Bottom line, our standard of prioritizing is what is equitable for our communities. What is equitable? And that is easy enough to seek out with information, right? And applied knowledge is power, not just knowledge, applied knowledge. So when we talk about other concerns, 5 out of the 17 Board of Regents members being from Eau Claire, that could be a concern. But when you look at the western side of this state, we need educational opportunities. We need this. I'm a recent graduate of Winona State University. One of the reasons I chose that university was because my first discipline was in the sciences. Wisconsin can do better, and we need to do better.
Thank you. Jeff Smith.
Yeah, I was just at a joint press conference for River Falls and Eau Claire. They're basically partnering and asking for these buildings that they need because it's really important. And I've been in both places. They're over 100. I think the River Falls building is over 100 years old, as a matter of fact. Eau Claire building is quite old. And when you talk about science, I mean, come on, technology has changed a lot. And it was amazing. They showed us how they can't even put some of the equipment above the first floor, any equipment actually that they use now above the first floor. And they have this 5-story building. So it's way beyond usefulness now. So that's the easy answer. But I'm interested to keep hearing what my counterparts on the Republican side say about science these days, because there doesn't seem to be a real faith in science. And we definitely want to promote science at our universities, or research at our universities, and turn that back into real jobs, particularly in our DNR and our environmental protections. And yes, we do have climate change happening in this world. Just look at the hurricanes that are constantly hitting and the flood and all of that's happening in this country right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. 67th Assembly District. Ren Katuri.
Great, thank you. I'm very excited about this project, not only for the economic impact it'll have for the Chippewa Valley, but also the new partnership it brings in with the Mayo Health Clinic. I had an opportunity to meet with the Chancellor from UW Eau Claire, and I find that this is an opportunity for my colleagues, knock on wood, if I don't win and I'm not in the legislature in the fall, for my opponent or anyone else to walk the walk. And we often, during election years, will hear, fund education. We have historic funding for education. This is the opportunity to walk the walk. And what I want to just point out is that if we had taken just that one-time tax giveaway, that was a one-time tax giveaway of $100 this fall, we would have halfway paid for this by now, right? So this is about priorities. We can prioritize education in the state. It is possible. The money is there. We have to make education a priority, not just during election cycles, but every single year here in Wisconsin.
Okay, thank you. Rob Summerfield?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm happy when I talked to Chancellor about 3-4 months ago about this project and talked with Mayo Clinic and a few other community members that have a vested interest in this project. With that, I did send a letter of support, asking the Board of Regents to move this project forward. Now with this project going, we'll be up in front of the legislature this next budget. I look forward to being a strong advocate, not just because the building's old, but the potential of kind of the theme we're going for in West Central Wisconsin, Chippewa Valley, is workforce development. The more and more we can invest, in the sciences, the technologies, and like I mentioned before, having the pipeline with the students, whether it's be CVTC, a trade, in the universities, that these need to continue to be our investments. So I'm happy that the Board of Regents approved this, and look forward to this next session fighting to make sure it gets on the list of approved projects throughout the state, so that makes sure that up here in the 67th, 68th, the Chippewa Valley area, that we do get our fair share of the funding for the building projects.
Okay, thank you. 68th Assembly. Jesse James.
Well, it is about fighting for our future, and I truly believe that this is a good investment for the Chippewa Valley. We need to be able to train and create internships and help our students get established and work with Mayo Clinic Health Systems. They've served our community very well, and it's a win-win partnership. It's all about preparing the wave of the future, and it's about our kids and our kids' kids, and I totally support it. We need to continue funding the UW system and the technical college system.
Thank you. Wendy Sue Johnson.
Yeah, isn't it nice that we agree that we should fund education? So I agree, we should support the sciences. We all agree that we should fund education. It's just to, I guess, to what level? Not only, does UWC need a new science building? Like Jeff, I remember being there decades ago, and it hasn't changed much. But again, it's priorities, right? So we need to invest in higher education, K-12, pre-K-12 education, technical colleges, all of it. And someone had mentioned earlier the economic impact of $1 invested in an $18 return. That reminded me, when I was on the school board, there's a very well-known study. For every $1 you invest in early childhood education, it pays off, saves communities or invests in communities another $17 with additional productivity and reductions in services that they need later on. And so we've seen throughout Wisconsin in the last several years, really, but just in this year alone, over 150, I think it's 156 referendums between spring and fall, and the passage rates are just astronomical. Like 3/4 of Wisconsin citizens are saying, yes, raise my local taxes because the state hasn't invested in education enough. And so we believe it. So let's go back to the state investing. So we're not pitting zip code against zip code. Every child pre-K 16 deserves a high quality education regardless of their zip code.
Okay, thank you. 91st Assembly, Jody Emerson.
I am absolutely in favor of this project, both this one and the one at River Falls. I had the opportunity to tour Phillips Science Hall just earlier this week, and I was really appalled at some of the conditions that I saw. Dust everywhere from where they're cutting rocks to look at for a geology lab. And I mean, I really looked at it and thought, we have safety issues, not only for our students, but for our workers there. And so I think this needs to absolutely be the highest priority for our buildings in the Regent system right now. And not only do we need to build the building, but we also need to fund the education system to properly staff it. The Chippewa Valley is becoming kind of a hub for science and technology. I mean, we've got Jamf Software, we've got the hospitals, we've got all kinds of different science and technology industries here, but yet we're still educating our college kids in a building that was built in the Sputnik era. I mean, it's just unbelievable. We expect them to learn in one situation and come out and be able to cope in a different situation. So we absolutely need to fund this, but we also need to make sure that we are funding the proper resources that go into that building as well. It's not just about the bells and whistles, it's about making sure our staff is paid well and respected, and that we've got the number of staff that we need to staff that building as well, whether it's teachers, support staff, professors, whatever. I'm completely in favor of this.
Thank you. Echo Reardon?
Hi, thank you. We do need to put teachers and students first, and we need to prioritize schools. This budget is a large amount, and we do need to make sure that it is going to practical use and to have a good cost benefit. So we do need to be wise in our dollars. However, I have 2 master's degrees in science, and I value education an extremely amount. Students need to be educated, and this is going to be an excellent program. This STEM courses are a solid investment in our students' future. And so far we have held tuition so that it is not a burden on parents or students to attend school. And what I'd like to do is recruit into the private sector and have them partnership with the students so that the private sector can groom and mentor the students and also help provide dollars as tuition assistance, maybe even a tax abatement then for the private sector. So basically our students are groomed as to the areas that they live in. I would like to see the UW take a look at duplicating curriculum that these sciences, these STEM courses are very expensive. And if we can focus on the areas of the state that produce manufacturing or pharmaceuticals, for example, and not duplicate, but be wise with our dollars and help the students. Thank you.
Thank you. 93rd Assembly District, Warren Petrick.
Well, thank you very much. As a UW Eau Claire alumnus, it's always exciting to see new growth and new opportunities at my alma mater. More than a few years ago, and a lot of you that are in this room were not even born when I was walking those halls and across the bridge during the cold weather. I've already had multiple meetings with the Chancellor, healthcare officials from the area, the Board of Regents members, and community leaders that have a vested interest in moving this forward. I think the vision behind it is wonderful. That Eau Claire could probably become the #1 destination in the nation for pre-med. And that includes pre-vet, pre-dental, all of the sciences, but it's a large vision. And to accomplish that is going to take a lot of leveraging. Nobody's mentioned the price tag yet, but I'm sure you read in the paper that it approaches about $250 million. Science is not cheap, as other people have mentioned. $250 million will not be an easy lift. So I hope to put my experience and my longtime relationships with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to work when I go back and make this project a reality for our region. Thank you.
Thank you. Charlie Warner.
Thank you. I am thrilled about this proposal for both Eau Claire and River Falls. I too have been to the universities and had my tours and was appalled at the science building's condition and equipment. Again, there is a problem with staffing, funding, the funds. We have to find them to stay competitive. We have to find them. And I'm especially interested because the 93rd District, as vast and broad as it is, has students that go to Eau Claire, that go to to Stout, that go to River Falls. And now my science students out there will have places to go right down the road. And everyone is going to benefit from that. The likelihood of keeping them here in the state once they've graduated goes up 90%. Because I will go to work for everybody in the 93rd, do what I can to help our people. Thank you.
Thank you. 23rd Senate District. Kathy Bernier.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited about the opportunity that's going to be available to students in the sciences. I agree that this, I worked hard once the Confluence project, the price tag came down quite a bit. I worked very hard on that project because it was a good bang for the buck. And I called every joint finance member saying, UW-Eau Claire has only had one building, one, in 30 years. I don't know why. There's a lot of reasons why, but only one. And I can make that same argument. Matter of fact, I personally called President Cross on this project simply because we have a wonderful opportunity here in West Central Wisconsin in healthcare. We're already ranked number 1, number 4 for our healthcare quality in the state of Wisconsin. And the partnership that we have an opportunity to do with Mayo Clinic in science and technology and research, clinical research with Mayo Clinic is outstanding opportunity, and I'm thrilled. And I can sell that in the legislature, and I have the ability to talk to my colleagues on that, and I will.
Thank you. Chris Kapsner.
Unlike Foxconn, this is a great investment. And it's also a great example of public-private partnership, that synergy that happens. And I do believe it's going to prepare this area for a 21st century economy. So I too have spoken with the chancellors of both UW-Eau Claire and Stout, and they have reflected on their struggles over the last 8 years where they have not been supported, they haven't been funded, and so we have a brain drain. So highly qualified professors can just go 90 miles to the west to Minnesota where they get paid more, they're treated better. This is also true of our local schools, our teachers. They have fled. Once upon a time, not very long ago, if there was an open position in our local school, there'd be 50 to 100 teachers applying for the job. Now we're lucky if we get 5. So I get back to the fact that we need to support education from pre-K through the time you retire. You should be able to retool at a technical college. We should support our UW system. Unfortunately, my opponent chose not to invest in our schools, in our education, and we need to change that.
Okay, thank you. On to our next question, and we'll start in the 68th Assembly District. Transportation funding continues to be a controversial and unresolved issue in Madison. In your view, what should the state's transportation funding look like in the future? And Wendy Sue Johnson, that'll be your question.
Thank you. Funding for our roads, just like for our schools, should be adequate. We, again, have made choices about our priorities. Thank you to Jody for pointing out that the bridge over Paint Creek in my district literally collapsed, literally fell in, and it can't be replaced for at least a year. There is no reason that we should have bridges collapsing. And the truth is, there is money being spent in the southeast corner of the state. There's money being spent on eminent domain to take people's homes. There's money being spent to create roads and infrastructure for that corporate welfare. And we should be all benefiting from infrastructure spending. And so no matter the details of that funding, it needs to be adequate and it needs to be equitable. Of course, there are lots of ways to get there. One of the, obvious ways seems to be re-indexing the gas tax to inflation so that it rises along with the cost of building roads. When we need things, we want things for our communities, we need to pay for them. And so, whether it's the gas tax or other ideas, redirecting the missing money that hasn't appeared for Eau Claire County, figuring out where that went, we need to prioritize it so it's adequate and equitable.
Thank you, Jesse James.
Well, this is another hot topic issue, and with our roads being 50, 60 years old in the state of Wisconsin, we need to make the necessary improvements. Talking with the voters in the 68th Assembly District, most of them, 99% of them, have stated to me that they would support a gas tax increase. Now, what that looks like exactly, that's yet remain to be seen. But I also think that there's not just one single source of revenue that's going to fix our roads. I think we need to throw all the options on the table. We need to look at them and see what's going to seek the best interests of the 68th Assembly and the state of Wisconsin. In Clark County, in some of the towns that I've been in, Hickson, Mentor, Longwood, they're tearing up the roads and they're making them gravel roads. That's an issue. We need to take a look at that. We need to do to do what we need to do to make the roads better in Wisconsin. Thank you.
Okay, 67th Assembly, Rob Summerfield.
Yeah, I'll agree with Jesse that, most of our town roads, our roads have been built 50, 60, sometimes 70 years ago. It's not fun to be in government at this point, 60 years down the road where there's been some lack of maintenance, but there's a lot of towns and a lot of communities that have kept up with the maintenance, but after 60, 70 years of constant wear and tear, you kind of got to bite the bullet and move on and rip up the roads and make them, rebuild them so they last for another 40, 50 years. I was happy this last session. We put the biggest increase ever for local road aids. I know majority of my townships got an 8.65% increase in their funding for roads, which 8.65% seems like a lot, but when it's only, you got a budget of 100,000, 120,000, I'm talking to townships and thinking, we need to do 8.65% probably for the next 5, 6 budgets, would be probably 12 years to get us up to that point. With the funding, there's a poll that came out yesterday that said 61% of the people don't want the gas tax or registration raised. So that's another caveat to this conversation. We need to look to see what the multi-pronged approach, with hybrids, how do we deal with hybrids and electric cars, because we can raise the gas tax, sunset it or not, but 10 years from now, if we keep on moving to electrical models of cars, that's not going to help with the funding for roads. So it does take a multi-pronged approach.
Thank you. Ron Katuri.
Yes, thank you for this question. I think transportation so perfectly summarizes our lack of leadership in the State House. We have had 8 years of single-party control in Madison, and yet we have not solved this problem. Can you imagine for 8 years having no obstacles to your decision-making and still not coming up with a solution to this problem? And, one of the things that I want to make sure we don't do is we don't burden our rural commuters. And, if you're driving from Holcomb all the way to Chippewa, you're spending a lot of money every week on gas, right? So we need to look at what other sources of revenue we have. And also, how can we keep the costs down? So I've been going to our town board meetings to talk to our town board officials about this issue. And one of the things they told me is they have solutions to make this cheaper. They have the solutions to make this cheaper. And yet the state comes in and says, no, you must do this our way. And I think if our local officials can find cheaper solutions to repaving their roads, to fixing their roads, we should empower them to do so. So we first need to find how can we make this more cost effective, and we also need to find other sources of revenue for transportation funding.
Okay, thank you. 31st Senate District, Jeff Smith.
Okay. Always hard to follow Ren Katuri because she's so smart and speaks so well, but I'll try. What I would, you know, the cowardice of politicians has really shown through when it comes to our roads. They originally set up this automatic indexing of gas tax because they were too cowardly to actually raise taxes, so they didn't have to do it, right? Then they got cowardly because they were attacked by, you know, right-wing radio that this was a bad idea, so they removed automatic indexing in 2005 without thinking ahead that what are they going to do to fund the roads? And now here we are. We're in this position where now they're back to we can't raise tax, but we don't have the funding. And we're pushing it down the road. This is so shameful. This is our children and our grandchildren they're bonding. I know that Pierce County Board recently passed a resolution to bond for their roads. So that brings me around to local control. We've got a state legislature who has put the clamps on local elected officials who they don't trust or want to look like they're protecting taxpayers from, when, by the way, those taxpayers and voters elected those people to do a job. We need to allow them to do their job. If the cowards in Madison can't do their job, we need to let our local officials do their job.
Thank you. Mel Pittman.
Thank you, Jeff, for letting everyone know about Pierce County. I don't have to say it then, but it is an issue. It's a serious issue with our local units of government, whether it's towns and counties, being short on money, and we need to get more money out to them to take care of the roads and bridges. Trempealeau County has a serious issue with faulting bridges that need to be replaced. But let's back up a second. You know, Jeff mentioned here about when the indexing came off in 2005, I think is the year he mentioned that. And it wasn't too long after that, the control in the legislature took money from the Highway Trust Fund and they used it for education. And then they had to go borrow money to replace that money. Now that debt needed to be paid back, so that took money away from the highway too. When I talk as a business person. I'm a dairy farmer. I've been through good times and I've been through bad. I'm not going to sit up here and I'm going to promise you we're going to pay all kinds of money for education. We're going to pay all kinds of money for transportation. I'm a person that's learned how to live within my means. I'm going to do as much as I can for the constituents out here. But if you think you can raise taxes on all levels and you expect businesses to stay in Wisconsin, you're fooling yourselves. And then when you talk about the brain drain that's going to happen, when the businesses leave the state, the kids are going to leave the state, and all you're going to sit here with was the high taxes and no industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Camacho.
So, in District 31, we have a diversity of communities. We have rural communities, we have urban communities, right? I've lived in both. I actually spent the majority of my time growing up being raised in an urban community. So moving to very rural Buffalo County at the end of a dead-end road that's gravel was a culture shock for me. I was used to my roads being plowed. I was used to all of this stuff that you get just on a timely basis in the urban communities. And then I come to find out that our local rural communities, as we've heard previous speakers mention, their local control is limited. And what we budget for varying communities in our district is not equitable. What Eau Claire needs is different than what our rural community needs. And we need leadership in Madison that will recognize that, allow for local control, right? Diversify our government and its power. But as we can see, oftentimes within local communities, for better or worse, accountability needs to be set in place. So there is a middle ground. We need local control, but we need accountability measures and standards that will ensure equitable outcomes for all of our communities in our district. And basically, our roads are the lifeline of our community. It's our bloodline. We can't support our families without it, and they must be a priority.
Thank you. Senate District 23, Chris Kapsner.
So the crumbling roads are a great example of how we've been neglected and we've been ignored. This is common sense, basic 101 idea to support our economy by having good roads. It supports safety by having good roads. But we have choices. Like Mel said, there's going to be a cost. There's no free lunch. You get what you pay for. So we can choose not to fund our roads and repair our roads, but that will come at a cost. The average Wisconsin driver spends $630 on car repair. So it still is a cost. Or we can do the rational thing and come up with a sustainable solution to maintain our roads, maintain our bridges, which support all aspects of our community. Economy, health, safety. So again, we need to make tough decisions, and we can't stop neglecting our communities. And this is also illustrated in a host of other areas, from chronic wasting disease to education to our environment. We need to make these decisions to come up with sustainable solutions that support everyone.
Thank you. Kathy Bernier?
Thank you. I served at the county level. I served in the village board. I serve at the state now, and we had to deal with budgets, and there were parameters, and there was never enough money, and the sky was falling, and everybody was trying to figure out where the priorities are, just like we do in our households. That is what the state has done in regard to the priorities here in the state of Wisconsin and transportation. I would like to clarify, Paint Creek didn't fall down because something was the state of Wisconsin DOT did or did not do. They kept changing the engineering and pushing it off, and fortunately we were able to save the day, and DOT helped, and we waived some dollars, and I was endorsed by that town chairman. And the other thing, as well as the missing money, there was no missing money. It was a bad communication between the DOT and when that money was coming to the local governments, and there's no missing money. We gave $56.9 million into local funding for local roads, the most in 20 years. I agree we need to continue that funding throughout the next several years so that they can get caught up. We have to get caught up. In case you didn't know, we had a big recession and there was no money coming in. We took $2.3 billion of stimulus money from the Obama administration, put that into Medicaid, pulled that money, general purpose revenue out, put it in the general, and we had to replace all that money. So we're doing well, Wisconsin, we're doing well.
Okay, thank you. Assembly District 93. Charlie Warner.
Transportation. Yes, I was sitting with the Pierce County Board when they decided to bond for $8 million. And I was reminded by the gentleman there that, again, you realize that's only for the county roads. Then we have to deal with the town roads. And of course, then there's the federal roads, the interstate, and who's going to fix them? I think it's a travesty. It has felt to me in the last 6-8 years that the towns, the cities, the state is starving us all so that no one has enough transportation funds. Part of that is because of all the borrowing and the amount of debt that everyone pays. And then in my little town, they get a letter saying you're gonna have to borrow for your transportation funds. And we sit there and try to figure out, because the town has a budget, like I have a budget, what we're going to do if something happens to the big trucks, or what we'll do if our key man retires and we'll never hire someone else. Well, we're not going to privatize. That is not a good idea. And we're not going to add toll roads to bring in money. But maybe we'll have to look at taking the sales tax from cars or new vehicles and using that in the transportation fund instead of the general fund. Just keep open to new ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Warren Petrick.
Good governance involves many factors. One of them is seeking savings and looking at the bottom line and then reprioritizing. It's not an easy job, but fortunately, I want to thank all of you to start with, because you voted in favor very heavily of the constitutional amendment, which means that the pot cannot be mismanaged internally anymore. It can't be taken out, but it will stay in, and thank you very much for that. It took a lot of work to finally get it done, but we did do that. But with new leadership at the top, we're looking at reprioritizing and getting more money out into the rural areas. I've had many conversations with the new secretary. He's a man from northern Wisconsin. He comes from Superior, and he says, Warren, I'm on that page. We need less money in the mega projects, and we can delay some of those and get it out into the rural areas, and that is one of my priorities. I strongly advocated for increased funding for local roads. We got that, as it was mentioned earlier, and less bonding to pay for these items. And so now we have the lowest bonding in 15 years. We have largest increases in local road aid in 20 years, and I will ensure that I'll work with people on both sides of the aisle, with the new faces, whoever ends up down there, and we will work at this very, very diligently to find long-term sustainable solutions for transportation. Raising taxes and fees must be a last resort. Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly District 91, Echo Reardon.
Hi, thank you. Yes, we do need safe and reliable infrastructure, and we do need some common sense solutions to that. We need to consider all options. We need to look at the private sector. If they say that they can help, they have ideas, listen to them. The private sector is industrious and motivated, so let's let the private sector take care of the roads. Consider tolls. Right now, we're looking at budgets. We're looking at moving from one source to another, from education to transportation. Bring on the private sector. And gas taxes, raising taxes, and burdening the ones that have to drive from the rural areas, which and the ones that don't have hybrid cars, it's not effective. So what you're going to be looking at is the burden is going to be put on the rural, and we don't want that. We want to have quality roads and quality education and quality form of life. We all want that. It's a nonpartisan goal. So what I want to do as the Mama Grizzly is to fight to have local dollars stay in local. And I also want to broaden the base to have the taxes brought in by the businesses. So if we produce a business-friendly climate, we will have a broadened base. And that's what's happening down in the southeast corner. Chicago is large, so we're wanting to attract and recruit taxpayers, and they're going to be coming from that area, but we want to bring them up to Eau Claire, and I will fight for that.
Thank you. Jody Emerson.
Well, I was afraid going last I wasn't going to have anything left to say, but I have a lot of things to refute here. A lot of people have talked about prioritizing our budget like we prioritize our household budget. And I would say that if my roof is leaking, I'm not going to spend a significant amount of my budget into a stock that we're not going to see returns on until 2041 or 2043. That's exactly what we've done with the Foxconn deal. If we continue to fund our roads at the rate they are and repair them, we are not going to be able to reconstruct every road in this state, for another 196 years. I don't think that's something that we can maintain. We need to invest in our roads because it's a shell game. As Chris mentioned, we've got high maintenance costs because of the problems with the roads. Our wheel taxes on a county and town level have tripled because we are just kicking the can down the road. We're saying, as a state, we're not going to deal with this, but you know what? You counties, you towns, you cities, you deal with it. You want nice roads to do, you have to raise the money for it. And so we're not taking responsibility as a state, and we need to do that. And as far as investing in private things, I don't want the Domino's pothole truck coming around and fixing my roads like they are in the commercials. This is a state responsibility. We don't need to privatize our roads and say, this road is sponsored by this corporation. Not what we're looking at.
Thank you. On to our final question before closing statements. What do you view, and we're going to start with the 67th Assembly District with this question, What do you view as the top 3 state issues affecting the Chippewa Valley? And how would you foresee working with the rest of the area delegation to take them forward in Madison? And Ren Katuri, we'll start with you.
Great. So we've had a lot of opportunities to talk about priorities, and I believe Representative Bernier brought up that, yes, a budget is a priority, and I think it's very, very clear where our priorities are in Madison right now. In fact, in 2017, we gave, and I have to double check because I could not believe this, $21 million to just 11 individuals who already make over $30 million a year each. We gave $4.5 billion to a private foreign corporation, and we have yet to find funding solutions to our most pressing challenges. When I look at the Chippewa Valley, I hear 3 big things: education, healthcare, and strong rural economies. When we look at education, my own community has had to go to referendum, and in our school district, we are repeatedly hundreds of thousands of dollars behind. With healthcare, I've talked to employers in my district who will pay their employees $250 just to drive to Minnesota to get their healthcare taken care of, right? That is a problem if we cannot, in this healthcare hub, expect people to get healthcare here in the Chippewa Valley. And then third, our strong rural economies. And that's not just our transportation, which is so, our infrastructure, which is so vital in our rural economies, but it's also our farmers. We have the highest farm bankruptcy rate here in western Wisconsin, and we have yet to do anything to help, whether you have 35 dairy cows or 1,000 dairy cows, make sure that you can thrive in this business and climate.
Thank you. Rob Summerfield?
Yes, I think the biggest challenges going forward, I mean, there's 3, we could say there's 7, 8 at least, that need to be on the top list of our priorities. First one, workforce development and training. Once again, when we're going around talking to companies, students, we need to make sure that there's a pipeline to make sure that we are filling the jobs that are in this area. There's a lot of skilled jobs that are out there that just do not have the adequate people applying to the job, so we need to make sure to fill those. Second of all, education is always going to be on the forefront. Education is the biggest part of the budget. I was happy in my first term to vote for the biggest increase in education in our history. Also, we also did $100 million in school safety grants. And I think at last count, the 67th Assembly is getting close to $1 million in the grants. So we have to keep on making education a priority, which I said, 2 years ago when I first ran, and I did deliver on this in this budget. And finally, like I said, there's a lot of them, but I think one of the biggest underreported issues we're going to run into is the meth and heroin epidemic that's out there. It is affecting everything in life, and we need to figure out, on the state level, what our roles can we do. This last budget, I supported giving Dunn County and Dunn County 2 assistant district attorneys and Chippewa 1 additional assistant district attorney to help with this problem. So it's very hard in a minute and a half to really go into big detail, but those are the 3 issues, 3 of the issues we need to address.
Thank you. 68th Assembly, Jesse James.
Well, I'm going to echo what Rob said. One of the big issues is the meth and opioids that exist in our communities. The meth and opioids are ravaging our families. It's devastating families, our children there's a lot of drug endangered children, a lot of people needing foster care. So you just look at what meth and opioids do, and it's impacting everybody, and people need to understand that. Whether it's breaking into the cars, a lot of retail thefts that go on, there's so many things that happen because of the meth and opioid addictions. Meth people don't die often, opioids people die. So we need to figure out some answers to that problem, and I look forward to taking on that issue. The other thing, I support education. I know that the last budget they put in over $600 million, an increase into the K through 12 side of things to help our teachers and offer the best education to our kids. I support that 100%. And then lastly, I support broadband. Broadband expansion for the 68th Assembly we want economic development in the 68th Assembly. There's a lot of communities, villages, towns that are failing because of that, and we need to get broadband into these areas. The southern part of Eau Claire County, the eastern part of Eau Claire County, Clark County, down in the north part of Jackson County, these areas need that broadband so that we can continue growing their communities.
Thank you. Wendy Sue Johnson?
Yeah, it's great to, again, to see us agreeing that education is a priority. It's just a matter of, how you approach that. And so while there was an increase in this budget for education, when you account for inflation, we are not yet at the same spending levels in education as we were 8 years ago. And so I think, whether it's the Chippewa Valley or anywhere in the state, we need to adequately fund public education no matter what your zip code. I agree with Ren that economic inequality and the ability to support a family is another top issue. We agree on a lot of the issues. Again, it's just a matter of how we get there. And so the issue that I am most concerned about and will fight the most for is nonpartisan redistricting. And I know it's a thick subject and I can talk to you at the table about it, but if we have elections that are responsive to you, then we have to earn your vote. We are accountable to you. We don't count on the fact that we're going to have the same party representing the same districts over and over and over because they took advantage of technology to draw that gerrymandered district in a way that I'm not supposed to win. But I believe as a former civics teacher, it's our responsibility to have competitive elections. And that's why I want to flip this seat, because we need to do better. We need to have a fair system where we get back and talk to one another again and compromise again. And it just can't happen when dark money and gerrymandering is controlling our elections.
Thank you. 91st Assembly District, Jody Emerson.
Well, I'd have to agree with Wendy Sue that one of the things that we need to tackle is gerrymandering. And the 91st is a highly gerrymandered district. So if I can say that I need to work hard for every single vote that I'm getting, I think we can all say that. Another thing that we need to look at is fixing our healthcare issue. We are so fortunate here in the Chippewa Valley to have phenomenal healthcare. However, our costs are escalating. What we're paying out of pocket, what our insurance premiums are, what our deductibles are skyrocketing. And we're turning into this system of, unless you've got thousands of dollars in the bank in a savings account, how can anybody go in for a simple something to check out before it gets into a big problem? And so we don't want to be having people on the outside looking in. We want to have everybody healthy and successful. Which also goes to my third point. Eau Claire, the city of Eau Claire, is a highly income disparity group. 46% of the citizens in Eau Claire are what are considered working poor or in poverty. Almost half of our neighbors don't have the money to make sure that they've got food, shelter, clothing, and access to healthcare, which ties into the other one. So we need to do what we can, whether it's raising the minimum wage, whether it's getting better paying jobs in here, whether it's however we do it, we need to make sure that we have the money to fund our families so that they can get what we need.
Thank you. Echo Reardon.
Hi, thank you. We must build a strong workforce, and we must invest in technical schools and apprenticeship programs. We must prioritize and put our students and faculty first, and prioritize our schools, as mentioned before. And we must ensure safe and reliable infrastructure. Healthcare is a very important issue, and we have to help our families have access to the healthcare that they need. And we also need to guarantee care for those with pre-existing conditions. We need to have transparency in the healthcare structure and dollars where they're being spent in the pharmaceuticals and insurance. And we also have to cut out the middleman. Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly District 93, Warren Petrick.
Well, it's probably no surprise that I think the number one priority for this area is workforce development. It has been my passion to work hard at the state level to provide as many family supporting careers and connecting them with employers as they possibly can. We got to assure that they have the opportunities to receive the training and the resources that they need. So workforce development, I think, is number one. Number two, expansion of broadband. We've heard it before, especially in rural areas. There are what are called underserved areas, but there are still unserved areas throughout the state. And I know that from the top down and at the federal level also, there's a lot of attention that will be brought this way. And fortunately, we have CAF funding that is coming from the federal government that is going to privately leverage a lot of expansion in the very near future. Some of the areas may still be looking at 3 to 4 years out before we can get it everywhere, but it's going to take tremendous amount of partnership. Lastly, continue working on a very evenly balanced taxation, bureaucratic, and regulatory climate. We have to create a great business environment for people to come in. And again, when we have those great jobs, people are raised out of poverty. It's the number one solution, is a great job of how to improve your own life and to improve your future. So my work has been recognized in the past 8 years by the Wisconsin Realtors Association, Wisconsin Farm Bureau, National Federation of Independent Businesses, and other business advocacy groups, and I intend to make Wisconsin a great place to work.
Thank you. Charlie Warner.
I think our number one priority in our Chippewa Valley and in my district, the 93rd, is the people. We have to take better care of the people. My soul breathing purpose to become the next legislator in Madison for the 93rd is to protect and enhance the lives of the people. That includes public health, because we don't have a good system and we're too expensive. That includes accepting global warming as part of the public health, because, and yes, we're bringing science back with a couple of buildings right here in western Wisconsin. But it's time to just look at reality. And the other thing is, I believe we need strong environmental controls. They need to be common sense. And those who are violating our environment laws need to have a little stricter repercussions. And it's time that we do that, and I will do that for the people, because everyone cherishes the land they live on and want to save it for their grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you. Senate District 23, Kathy Bernier.
Thank you. Workforce development is redundant, I know, but when you have employers right now clamoring to start people at $15 an hour and a $3 differential on the weekend with no specific training, just the willingness to work right here in Eau Claire. So we need to let people know that those jobs are available and there are employers willing to pay that. And so I think there's a little misinterpretation of just what's being paid and what employers are paying right now. Rural education and broadband sort of go together. We are working on that. I was just at a farm yesterday, a high-tech farm. They put a device in the ear of the cow. They know when, if it's sick, if it's not, if it's eating well, if it's ovulating. They know everything about this animal, and it's just like crazy. But they have to spend $400 a month for their internet service, and that's a lot. I think mine's a lot less than that. And the tax code rewrite, something I've been working on with Representative Mako to make it fairer, flatter, and more efficient, and to be able to provide a sustainable revenue stream to local governments that they can count on that will grow slowly, such as the use of a certain percentage of sales tax. We've been working on that diligently, and I want you to stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Kapsner.
So I've heard a lot about workforce development, and I've had the good fortune of, I'm a doctor, I'm an ER doctor, and I've helped take a fragile group of 8 doctors. And we had a hard time attracting talent and retaining talent. So the basic fundamental principle of building businesses is investing in each other. And that small fragile group has gone from 8 doctors to 100, one hospital to 10. We have 300 employees. We're in Minneapolis, St. Paul, rural Minnesota, western Wisconsin. I know how to build a business. And when I look at Wisconsin, treat it as a business. And we need to get back to the fundamental building blocks of investing in each other. These are our Wisconsin traditions of supporting each other, supporting our schools. We need not just good schools, we need world-class education. Healthcare. You can't be healthy and productive without good health care. My opponent and the Republicans have chosen not to support health care categorically. They failed to take federal money for Badger Care. By the way, that cost us $1 billion. And then you add on top of another $3 billion for Foxconn. We don't need to raise taxes. We need to use our money wisely. So I get back to the fundamental building blocks. It's healthcare, education, infrastructure, good roads, clean air, clean water. Those are all common sense things that I've been cut off. No.
I don't have
anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Senate District 31, Aaron Camacho.
So Wisconsin's legacy that I was very much aware of growing up was our education. And because that is an item that almost across the board, 100% here tonight, we've heard that that's a priority. So we're just going to give that as a given for our state. We need to get back to where we built ourselves up to be. But our main issues, I think, in our state that also have a big weight in our district are access to government, okay? And access to government includes a lot of things. It's an intersectional issue. When you have access to government, education is key to that, right? We need to teach people how to function and operate within our own government because remember, the government is ourselves. It is not a party. It is not the other party. And we need to stop the cross-party bickering because the binary discourse that we've allowed to perpetuate in Wisconsin has been to our detriment. To our detriment. We are all at fault when we go like this because one finger's pointing out and three are right back at us. So access to government, gerrymandering needs to be fixed, immigration reform needs to be fixed. Automatic voter registration is a must. If we can draft our young men and potentially our young women at 18, they should be given undue burden, right? They shouldn't be unduly burdened, given the opportunity and avenue to vote with ease. Lastly, it's our environment, okay? Our environment is second to none. What we've seen in our area has been critical in terms of frac sand. That plays into pipelines, that plays into mines, and Wisconsin is at risk. Our other legacy is our environment.
Thank you, Mel Pittman.
When I look at our state of Wisconsin and our district here, number 31, I see that it's like a three-legged stool that we got to focus on. Families, schools, and businesses. We have to have all three an even leg in order to function in a well-run community. We need families to be in our communities, rural communities. If we have families there, we'll have schools that'll thrive. But what's going to keep our families out there? The only thing that'll keep our families out there are businesses. So we got to have the businesses there so we can have our families there, so that we can have our schools there. And so how are we going to do that? Education, in no particular order, education and school safety are really important. We got to protect our most precious resource, our children. Transportation and infrastructure, broadband, and highways. We have to get broadband out there in order to keep our businesses out in our communities, rural communities in particular. And workforce and welfare reform are another key. You know, we talk about the low unemployment rate, but there's still a lot of people that are either unwilling or unable to work. We have to get those people back engaged in our workforce so that we can have a stronger economy. More revenue coming into the state in income tax and less benefits being paid out is a key to having a positive way. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Smith?
You're right, Jody. Being last is really difficult because that list has gotten really long. It was long before we even started here for me. Where do you start? I've knocked on thousands of doors this year, thousands of doors, and yeah, I always ask people, what is your top issue? Because that's what should become my top issues, because we should be listening if we want to represent the people that elect us. And generally, healthcare is right up there. But I also have to prod them, you know, because I sneak up on them. They're not really ready for that tough question when I get to the door. You know, so healthcare access is really important. Pre-existing conditions cannot go away. And we've got a party that has been trying to dismantle the Affordable Care Act and pre-existing conditions since its inception. And we cannot let that happen. We need to keep that in place and then advance healthcare access for everybody down the road. Single-payer healthcare has got to be our goal. We have rural schools who are at risk. We're losing our rural school districts because, why? We're trying to now fund 2 school districts in this state. Why are voucher school recipients getting guaranteed $7,500 per student, whereas Pepin School District is lucky to get $500 per student from our state? We need to prioritize our public education. But you know what? All of that doesn't happen unless we fix gerrymandering. And the last thing, but the most important thing that I'm sorry, but I'm going to go over like everybody else did, is that is that partisanship. And that is something I think we heard of many times, but that's the one thing finally people say to me, I'm sick and tired of the partisanship because nothing gets done. And we need people representing us that listen.
Okay, on to closing statements. And thank you for bringing up the going over. We'll try to keep this one at 2 minutes, please. You went last, so you get to start this time.
Oh, I do?
Yeah, we'll start with the 31st Senate District. Jeff Smith.
All right, thank you. I think I just did my closing statement, didn't I? Yeah. Many of you know me. I've been around for a while, particularly in Eau Claire. I started out in politics on the town board. I was very involved as a community advocate through our school district, and I always blame my wife and my oldest daughter over there taking a picture right now, that if it weren't for them, I wouldn't have gotten involved in the schools and wouldn't have become aware of what a privileged life I've led and why I need to help and serve all the rest of my community and give back. So here I am. I ran for office. I won a seat into the assembly in 2006, served 2 terms, proved myself to be a leader and to be someone that could be trusted. And that's what we have to do as a community. We have to build relationships. We have to grow on that, and we have to build trust. And when I talked about that partisanship issue, that's how it's got to happen, is how we're going to fix that, is that we need people down there like myself who believe in that, who believe that other sides have good ideas. That when I was a chair of a committee, I didn't contact the Democrats in my committee first. I always, with every bill that came through, I contacted and had meetings with each of the Republican members in my committee because I needed to hear from them, because I know their ideas would be a little different, and that we had to have that input if we're going to get things done. And that's how we accomplish things. That has got to happen. That has got to happen if we're going to save democracy. On top of the fact that we need to, I'm going to say it again and again, that that redistricting reform has got to happen, and we should each up here pledge to support that. Every one of us should pledge to support that bill and let the voters choose and a nonpartisan commission choose those maps. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel Pittman.
Reversing the order on us now. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity for my closing comments. I've been involved, in addition to my dairy career, I've been involved in numerous other leadership positions. That's taught me a lot about my abilities and what other people think of who Mel Pittman is. Been on county board in Pierce County for 12 years, and Jeff mentioned that Pierce County recently bonded for $8 million shortly after I stepped off the board. We also bonded for $7 million about 6 years earlier. So I understand the difficulties of local government. I was also nominated or elected chairman of Farm Technology Days when we hosted that in Pierce County. That was a group of volunteers of about 1,200 volunteers that I was chairing over. And a couple years after that, I was elected to the State Board of Directors for Farm Technology Days, which is going to be held here in Eau Claire County in the year 2020. I've served as chairman of my dairy co-op board of directors, been involved in many other boards and committees, so I have a well-rounded background. But one of the things I'm most proud of is our 3 children and 2 grandchildren. And my oldest daughter is a school teacher. My second daughter is a medical professional. And our son surprised us after going to 1 year of CVTC in Eau Claire here that he came home and said, I want to join the Marines. His mom and dad were quite surprised, actually, but we supported him because that's what he wanted to do. Now he's a police officer down in the state of Arizona. And it wasn't that long ago, he was talking to his mom on the phone, and after dealing with juveniles that are in trouble down there and things like that, he said, Mom and Dad, you guys did a pretty good job raising us kids. That's very nice to hear. I feel that people that know me respect me. I'm willing to work across the aisle and do what it takes to get the job done. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron Camacho.
Well, thank you all for sticking it out and sitting here listening with us. I know it's not easy to sit for varying amounts of time depending on ability levels, but I appreciate it nonetheless. I'm running because we need a united Wisconsin, and we need to be operating within our political realm as in our social realms with mutual understanding and respect. It doesn't matter what line or direction you're coming from, we all are human beings and we deserve mutual understanding and respect. That is how I operate. If you look at my past endeavors, I've been in leadership roles, I've been on the Winona Human Rights Commission, I've been the president of a local nonprofit for 2 years, and I carried out my 2-year term successfully. And we brought about education, intersectional education. All of these life skills, right? You put those tools in the toolbox and you try and use them to support your community. But I also have life experiences that let me understand that even though we all want everyone to go to college, we want everyone to have a high-paying job, we want everyone to succeed, I know what it's like and what it's like to come from where you don't necessarily know that that's your reality, right? I have experience, homeless teen. Last 2 years of high school, I paid it for it out of my own checkbook, made it happen, high school graduate. Had to work in the workforce, was in management, right? I know how to delegate. I know how to work out interpersonal issues in a healthy way that doesn't alienate people. Because in the end, we're in this together, no matter what. We're not in Wisconsin alone. We're not on Turtle Island, North America alone. We're in this together, and we have to understand our ripple effects. Now, when we talk about challenging the binary discourse happening, it is important that we do so. Our democracy, the health of our state, and the health of our communities depend on it. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate your attention.
Thank you. 23rd Senate District, Chris Kapsner.
Yes, thank you all for being here. And again, I'm a doctor. I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman. I'm not a politician. I watched common sense leave the state about 8 years ago, and we're on a very concerning, dangerous, destructive path that is not sustainable. I have 4 children, and I want them to live in Wisconsin. I want them to have families here and have good paying jobs and be happy and healthy and off my payroll, by the way. And so when I look at the state, we need to get back to our Wisconsin traditions and values of, again, investing in each other, supporting each other, getting back to common sense things such as schools that work for everyone, healthcare that works for everyone, good roads, clean air, clean water. These are all common sense things that we all agree on. And at the end of the day, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, we all want the same thing. It's opportunity. Opportunity for ourselves and our children. And we can do that if we come together and walk together and understand that we're in this together. So I've spent my career as a doctor, listening to my patients, advocating for my patients. They don't always get a box of Percocet when they go home, by the way, but I will go to bat for them, and I'll do that for the 23rd District. I'll listen, and all I want are good ideas, and those good ideas may come from the Republican Party, they may come from the Democratic Party, but ideally they come from the people of the state. And all I'm looking for are good ideas that are cost effective and support everyone. And that I will promise to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Bernier?
Thank you. Wisconsin is booming. The United States is booming. We've had an extraordinary growth rate, and what the U.S. does affects the state of Wisconsin. And a 1.2% growth rate is not the norm, thank goodness. Clearly, when you're running for office, your opponent will say, you aren't doing very good things. Well, that's how it works. But if you are an independent thinker, and you can clearly see that our state is doing very well. Wages are up and growing. Unemployment is down almost as low as it can go. I was the lead on Wisconsin Fast Forward bill that has been instrumental in worker training, from STEM programs to K-12 to the tech college programs and places of business. I will quote my friend Deb Leslie, the executive director of Wisconsin Workforce Resource Job Center in Chippewa Falls. This is the best government program I have ever seen. I am running for state senate because I want to continue the values and principles that have made Wisconsin a better place to work, live, and raise a family. My children and grandchildren all work hard and are finally getting ahead. Their wages have risen. They now have numerous employment opportunities. I want those same opportunities for you and your children and grandchildren. I would appreciate your vote November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. 93rd Assembly District, Charlie Warner.
Well, it's been a complete pleasure for me to be a part of this panel tonight. And I love looking around the room and seeing the people and feeling the energy here. The photo that advertised this program showed the group from last year, which was a small table of all men. So I'm really happy to see that it's changed so dramatically, especially today, because this is the International Day of the Girl, where we celebrate education for all women worldwide. So I'm just really thankful to the sponsors for having this tonight. But my deepest gratitude goes out to the people here, because you're here because of your participation, your interest, and your activism. I mean, the truth is, we live in stressful times. The Dow plunged over 800 points yesterday. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? You know, it seems that it's time that we need to invest and participate in our democracy. We've gotten out of the habit of being democratic, and that has to change. We're all going to the polls in 25 short days. We all have decisions to make, options to consider. We're all going to be asking ourselves some very fundamental questions. For one, are you satisfied with your health care? Another one, would you like to see medical marijuana legal in your state? Do you feel heard, respected, and well informed regarding your local and state government? If you answer yes, your decision is clear. But if you answer no, or you're not sure, If you don't think that the last 8 years has put you on a nice path to success, don't despair, for you have options this year. We have some great people on this board, and I'm happy that we agree on more than we disagree. But you have options when you go to the polls. Go on November 6th and vote your heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren Petrick.
Of the many blessings that I've been given in this life, and I certainly have had more than my share, serving in this capacity as a public servant to the 93rd District has been one of the greatest. And so I thank all of you that have put your trust in me these past 8 years. It has been a remarkable run from an inherited mess to the success that we have today. I like data. I'm sort of a data nut, and just a few things really jump out at me. Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development said we've added more than 200,000 new jobs in the last 8 years. 91,000 new businesses. Imagine your children having that opportunity to go to work for them. We have the lowest unemployment rate, as has been said. The Federal Bank of St. Louis said that Wisconsin wages grew by almost 6% last year, growing faster than 46 other states. According to DWD, our manufacturing gains in the last 6 months made us the number 2 in the nation for manufacturing jobs. We made historic record investments in our children, K-12 education, school sparsity, low revenue districts, workforce development, tourism, broadband internet expansion, school safety, opioid and methamphetamine treatment, youth apprenticeships, fabrication labs, local road aids, communicable disease control, Alzheimer's and dementia research, and on and on. I'm very proud of the work that I've done, and I will continue to work for Western Wisconsin. That will be my #1 priority. I will remain focused on collaboration, practical solutions, and positive results. Thank you all very, very much, and I look for your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you, Assembly District 91. Echo Reardon.
Thank you. I am running to be Eau Claire's voice in the State's Assembly. Madison must get to work to make our area reach its full potential. So Wisconsin is going in the right direction, and common sense will tell you that. We have the finest healthcare. We have great schools. We've invested deeply into those schools, and we need to continue. The Dow you mentioned was at 17,000, and now it's at 28. It has dipped slightly, but that's just a result of some of the concerns of the day, and it'll return. But the thing is if we raise taxes and if we keep regulations high, we cannot produce a business-friendly climate. And common sense will tell you that you must have businesses. Here, if you don't attract businesses, they will move elsewhere. That's a fact. And so you'll be stuck with paying taxes, whatever the base is. So if you broaden the base by allowing businesses to come to our community, then you will have less taxes for everyone and a higher quality of life. Eau Claire is experiencing new growth and prosperity. I would like to advocate for policies that provide tools for everyone to achieve this economic prosperity. And I do offer an alternative to raising taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody Emerson.
Well, first of all, Jeff, I pledge to support the nonpartisan redistricting when I get to Madison. Thank everybody for this evening. Tonight was about spelling out our differing views and diverse opinions about those who are asking for your vote. Neighbors talking to neighbors. This is democracy at its finest. And that's what we really are on this platform. We are your neighbors. Many of you know me as your neighbor, and that's what I will continue to be if I'm fortunate enough to serve in Madison as your next representative. Serving as an elected official was never a dream of mine, but sometimes leaders need to step up when presented with that option. Serving the community is what I've done my entire adult life in one way or another. When my children were young, I, like many others, volunteered in their school. And I'll never forget one of the first times that I was volunteering in my oldest daughter's kindergarten class. One girl who I was helping with a project started crying, and she said, "I miss my dad." And I said, "Well, is he gone for work or something?" And she started sobbing, and she said, "He's in jail." That's the minute that it hit me that not every kid starts out the same way. This girl did not have the same opportunities, did not have the same home life that my children had. And as a community, we needed to band around her and others like her and do what we can to help them. My community service continued later with the fight against human trafficking. When I would talk about human trafficking to groups of people, they were surprised that I or someone I loved was not a victim of human trafficking at some point in my life. It didn't happen to my family, but it does happen to families. It happens to families in Eau Claire, and it happened to families in my neighborhood. And I decided to fight against the human trafficking epidemic, not because it had impacted my life, but because it had impacted someone's life. If I waited until it hit close to home, I'd waited too long. Several of my platform stances are based on policies that have impacted my family, but not just because they're impacting my family. It's because they're impacting people in the 91st and around this state. I'm asking you to send me to Madison so that I can not only fight for my family, but I can fight for each of yours as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly District 68, Wendy Sue Johnson.
Clearly, I'll also take Jeff's pledge, and not because it would be beneficial to me, but because it's the right thing to do. Even if we have a blue tsunami and have the opportunity to redraw districts, I still would do the right thing and do nonpartisan redistricting. I can't imagine loving this job enough that I want to stay there forever. Like, who would, in their right mind, would do that, right? So I think the difference that we should focus on is enough with competing with different states and competing with each other. I'm proud that on the school board, I stood up for our public workers. Our teachers are underpaid. They do difficult work and they raise our little humans to be the next generation and take care of us. And I'm not afraid to say that. That I stood up for public workers. We should not pit public workers against private workers. We should not pit one another against each other. I think that every child in every zip code deserves an excellent education, not just because their parents or their neighbors can raise their property taxes with a referendum. I believe every human deserves shelter and food and health care, not just access, not just that there's a place in town that you can go if you can afford it, but actual health care. We don't have the best health care in the world. We are well below the rest of the world in outcomes, and that's not acceptable in a nation like ours. And so we need to take care of one another. I don't want you to send me to Madison for me because I got a pretty good life, and my husband would probably be glad if I took a few plates off the spinner. But I'm going because I think it's my responsibility to serve my community. I have a pretty thick skin, and so when there's negative dark money ads running against me and other people are freaking out, I am not, because we all need to do our part because we all deserve better.
Thank you. Jesse James.
Well, thank you all for being here. I want to thank everybody, the Chamber, Leader Telegram, Valley Media Works for putting this on tonight, and TV 18. I also applaud the camera operators who've been mostly standing up this whole time, videotaping everybody. It's been a good night. It's very enlightening. I'm proud to run for the 68th Assembly. I've lived here my whole life, besides being in the time in the service. I remember starting my careers out at Shopko in Chippewa Falls, making $3.35 an hour. I progressed in life. I went from there into the service, achieved my, went in the U.S. Army, then came out came back to Eau Claire, went into U.S. Army Reserves as a medic, and just continued to grow from there. I was a Chippewa Valley bus company school bus driver. I've done things that people may not know. I drove limousine for them. I've cleaned buses for them. It's about advancing in your life. I worked for DACO Food Products Club Choice Fundraising, working in the warehouse, and I was promoted to a warehouse coordinator. It's all about advancing into life, and then use my GI Bill to pursue my education in law enforcement, and then serving in Spring Valley and Elmwood, starting out my career, and then eventually going full-time with Altoona. Been working there for almost 17 years. So over 40 years of my life, I've served in the public. It's about serving the community, and I'm ready to go up to the next level. I'm ready to take it to a larger district and serve the 68th Assembly. There's so many things that need to be worked on. I have no issue working bipartisan with anybody. I think that's one of the things where people just need to learn to listen more and talk less. And that's what my goal is. And I don't want the red card to pop up, so I thank you all for being here. Remember to vote Jesse James for the 68th Assembly November 6th.
Okay, thank you. Assembly District 67, Rob Summerfield.
Yes, and I'd like to thank everybody who took time out of their day to come to this event. It's been a fun 2 years, or actually a little over 2 years since I started my first campaign in our kitchen table in March of 2016. From that day on forward, every available waking moment of 2016 before the election, I was out doing doors, besides running a business, raising 3 girls, and I couldn't have done it without the support of my wife and my family. So after 2016 election, the work began. And since that time, I can proudly say I am happy what I am doing for the citizens of the 67th in Madison. I'm really proud to show my daughters, what their dad has accomplished. It has been all roses and butterflies and unicorns, even though my daughter loves her unicorns. You get down to Madison, in the Assembly, we're 1 out of 99. People call me and say, hey, Rob, can't you do this? I said, yes, I would love to, but, I still gotta get 49 of my members to go with it, 17 of the Senate to go with it, and I need to get the governor to agree with me. And most people do recognize that there is only so much one representative can do. However, most people do realize, though, a representative can be a very strong voice, and which I can proudly say I have been. Education, record funding for education, broadband expansion. Just this last month, my district got almost $750,000 to serve underserved areas in the Holcomb-Bloomer area. The other bills that I've been proud of, I did bills to fight fraud. I did a bill to help small businesses. I did a bill to help low-income housing, and that's with all the other bills I supported, co-sponsored, voted on in the budget. So I am proud for what I have done and look forward to serving with a complete passion and for the citizens of the 67th Assembly District this next coming 2 years. So thank you.
Thank you. Ren Katuri.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who's been here tonight. Thank you to our moderator, who's done a great job. The timekeeper especially. I know it's probably the most boring job of the evening. And then especially thank you to everybody who is up here for your commitment to serving your communities in this way. So I've been working for the past 5 years with public educators, support staff, administrators, and quite frankly, I became fed up. What I learned through that process is that your zip code matters. And unfortunately, in especially Northwest Wisconsin, too many of our rural zip codes matter. And I'm running because I fundamentally believe that your zip code shouldn't matter. It shouldn't determine whether or not you have quality education. It shouldn't determine whether or not you have access to a middle-class job. And it really shouldn't determine whether or not you can drive on safe roads. And it definitely shouldn't determine whether or not you have affordable health care. Now, we are at a time in which we've had 8 years of single-party control and 5 years of the largest economic growth in a generation. Why can't we solve these problems? I think it comes down to 2 things. I think it comes down to priorities and political courage. And I want to go to Madison because I fundamentally believe that we can solve these challenges, but we have to have lawmakers who have the courage to stand up to special interests, who buy their seats. We have to have lawmakers who have the political courage to say no when big money comes knocking on your door and says, I want this changed. And we have to have lawmakers who have the political courage to say, this is how our democracy should work. It should be by and for the people, and that's what we need in Madison is we need representatives who will represent their constituents appropriately, adequately, and with courage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to Valley Media Works, who is video recording the forum tonight. And you can check out their website, valleymediaworks.org, for a schedule of rebroadcasts or to view it on demand. If you'd like to visit individually with these candidates, as we mentioned earlier, they'll be along the sides. I'm not going to promise how late they're going to stay. That's, I guess, kind of up to them. On behalf of all of the event sponsors tonight, thank you for coming. Be sure to vote on Tuesday, November 6th. Thank you.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.